All right, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you are enjoying the good food. Is it not good? It's always good, right? I have to tell you, the DoubleTree has exceeded themselves. Not only have we got a great staff serving us, but the program like this that came together so fast. We didn't start this until like 3.5 weeks ago. And so it has, especially the last couple of days, has been kind of crazy. And the DoubleTree has been phenomenal in adjusting to us and helping us and making sure this evening was such that every need was met and every person had a good spot and a good food. So I hope you feel that way, because I know we that were working behind the scenes are very appreciative of the help that they have given us. I'm Connie Beard. I've worn a lot of hats in this party. Currently, I am the membership chairman, as well as a coordinator for our events. So I have a lot of fun with that. I'm excited as our party has continued to grow in the last couple of years. Every month we have new membership joining. You saw out in the check-in registration, there are new updated posters listing some of our members and what they have contributed. They're the backbone of this party. They're the reasons we can keep the lights on. They're the reasons we can keep training our precinct committeemen. They're the reasons we can keep supporting our candidates. So I am just so grateful for our executive board. I'm grateful for all of our members, and I want to have more. I'm not satisfied with just what we got, guys. So you have an opportunity tonight to step up and become a member of the McLean County Republican Party. We have 3 different levels of membership. We have our basic members that are $10 a month. We have our general members that are $20 a month. And then we have our premier members that are $100 a month. Now, each level provides some incentives, some thank yous. Everybody gets one of our cool GOP McLean County Republican mugs, which, all right. And if you haven't been able to read the back side of our mug, I just love this. Safety, prosperity, sanity. It's the Republican way. So if you would like your own personal McLean County Republican mug, you simply can go out to the desk. I will be out there after the program tonight, and we'll sign you up. Our general and premier members have some added benefits to being a member. We have a book group that we give every quarter or so. We give away a free top-selling book. This is the current one we're going to be working on and doing a book discussion on Battle for the American Mind, Uprooting the Century of Miseducation. Wonderful top seller book about looking at what's been happening to our education system. So general and premium members can have a free copy and join in on a great discussion about the merits and the points and the things that the book that provides. And for our premier members, we also have an opportunity for them to have some one-on-one time with some of our elected officials, such as in May. I hope Congressman LaHood remembers that he's supposed to be coming back in May for a roundtable discussion that will be just our premier members to sit down and have some coffee and a little breakfast and be able to pick his brain and let him be able to give us some direct updates as to what's happening in Washington. So we are trying to pull together a lot of great incentives for people to want to be part of the McLean County Republican Party. So I hope you'll give it some serious thought and check the membership table on your way out tonight. I am privileged to be the one that gets to introduce our next portion of our program. It's hardly little introductions really needed, except I can tell you that I've been a fan of this man since the first time he called me up on the road saying, Connie, I want to talk to you about my running for Congress. I hear you're somebody to talk to in McLean County. And he bit my ear then and kept doing it several times, and I became just convinced that he was absolutely the man I wanted to be my congressman in the United States Congress. So I'm glad he's been able to survive, not only survive, but succeed and begin to develop some real clout in Washington. He represents us well. So I am thrilled that he's coming here to give us an update. Please welcome Congressman Darin LaHood.
All right. Yes, I will. Thank you, Connie. And it's a pleasure to be with everybody tonight. You may have seen we were in session today. I voted against a really terrible spending bill this morning in Washington, D.C. And voted no on that. I raced to the airport, got on a flight to O'Hare, which was delayed. When I arrived in O'Hare, it was snowing. Doesn't seem like the second day of spring, does it really? No, had to rent a car and drove straight here. But I wanted to be here because this was an important night. And I want to acknowledge Connie for all the work she does, her commitment and dedication to our party and putting this on tonight. Connie, thank you so much for everything you do. It's great. The other good thing about coming here tonight is my wife doesn't normally come to D.C. with me, but she came for a couple days this week, and so she got to get in the car, be delayed, drive here tonight. And so my wife, Kristen, who's my #1 supporter, is with me tonight, too. So thank you, Kristen. I know I have the honor of introducing our guest of honor tonight, Tom Homan. I'm going to do that in a second here. But let me just tell you what an honor and a privilege it is to represent McLean County in Washington, D.C., and to represent your values. Many of the people in this room that care deeply about this country, care deeply about the rule of law, and care about the direction that they see this country going. And so I'm grateful for all of you tonight for your commitment and dedication to this issue, to our Republican Party, and to what we're going to hopefully do in November. Everybody knows we just had an election this week, and we had some contested primaries, of course, but the primaries are over now. And now we need to unite as Republicans. Everybody supported different candidates from president all the way down. But after a primary, we unite, and we have some wonderful candidates from Desi to Regan to Sally Owens and to many others, Chris Balkema, that won their primaries, and now we're going to support them between now and November. And you hear this all the time. This is the most important election. When I think about my lifetime, this is the most important election. When you see the direction of this country and where we're going. So we have to be united as Republicans to do everything we can to win the election in November. And I look forward to standing shoulder to shoulder with everybody in this room and do everything I can to get these great candidates across the finish line. But I'm going to need your help tonight, and we're going to do it and have a great November. I know he's not here tonight, but you guys know that if you want to see the deficiencies of gerrymandering by Democrats in Illinois, just look at my district, because McLean County should be in one congressional district, but it's not. I have most of McLean County, but I split it with Eric Sorensen, the Democrat, who's a freshman. We have a great candidate that won the other night, Judge Joe McGraw. Now, I know Judge isn't here tonight, but Judge McGraw needs to be my colleague in Congress. There's many things he could be doing besides running for Congress. He's a retired judge, was a great prosecutor, was the chief criminal judge. He's a great candidate. If you haven't met him yet, meet him. But he's going to be running strong between now and November, and we need to have him in Congress to add to our majority there. So I wanted to mention that. Now, let me just talk a little bit about immigration and the topic tonight. Before I got into politics, I spent time as a federal prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I've prosecuted immigration cases. I've sent people back to their country of origin that have been in this country illegally. We are a country predicated on the rule of law and standing up for the rule of law. It doesn't mean we don't want people to come here. Of course we do. We're all part of an immigrant fabric over the last 200 plus years. But we are a country based on the rule of law. And when you see what's gone on over the last 3.5 years here, it's almost, it reminds you of an America that we didn't grow up in. To have 8.7 million people come across our border in the last 3+ years. It's absolutely ridiculous what's happened. I often think about my great-grandparents immigrated from Lebanon. They came through Ellis Island about 100 years ago to Peoria, Illinois. Didn't speak any English, didn't have any money, had a strong faith in God, and had an American dream. And all of us, somewhere in our background, had relatives and immigrants that came to this country, whether that was 2 generations ago or 7 generations ago. But they did it the right way. And that's what makes our country great, is people that do that follow the rules, follow the laws, and come here to live the American dream. And that's what this country is all about. But it has to be based on the rule of law and legal immigration. And that's not what's happening in this country. And so what have we done? We haven't done enough, obviously. But we did pass last summer a bill called H.R. 2 in the House of Representatives that I proudly supported, spoke on the House floor on. I just want to tell you a couple things of what H.R. 2 does. H.R. 2 reforms the asylum system by preventing fraud, raising the credible fear standard, and returning asylum to its historical roots and original intent. Number 2, we end the Biden administration's catch and release policy and give the federal government additional tools to secure the border. We address the exploitation of children, ensure that children remain together and are reunited with their parents under H.R. 2, and then we also reduce the job magnet of illegal immigration by mandatory E-Verify. We also re-implement Remain in Mexico policy. I don't think people understand this. In the Trump administration, and Tom can talk about this, President Trump put in place the Remain in Mexico policy, went to the Mexican government and said, we're not going to give you any more foreign aid or military assistance unless you stop everybody on the Mexican side of the border. You can apply for asylum, you can apply to become a citizen of the U.S., you can apply for a green card, but you're not going to do it in America. You're going to do it on the Mexican. What happened? It was to a trickle. We brought illegal immigration to a trickle at the end of the Trump administration. And on day 1, that executive order was ripped up by Joe Biden. And that's why we're in the situation we are today. And so H.R. 2 that I mentioned passed the House of Representatives, got sent over to the Senate, and Chuck Schumer has done absolutely nothing with it. Now, that shouldn't surprise any of us, because this is more about politics than it is substance and fixing the border, in my view. A lot of these new folks that are coming in are new voters for the Democrat Party. Unfortunately, that's the reality of it. But when people say, oh, Republicans haven't done anything about illegal immigration, yes, we have. We've passed H.R. 2, but you will hear nothing from the media on any of that. Nothing. That shouldn't surprise us. The second thing I want to mention, I proudly supported on the House floor the impeachment of Mayorkas. Secretary Mayorkas, we voted to impeach him. Now, impeachment under our Constitution should be reserved for high crimes and misdemeanors. But when you are blatantly violating the law and not enforcing it, what else can you do when you've had that many people come across the border? So, of course, we sent that over to the Senate now, and they're, under their obligation, have to have a trial and try Secretary Mayorkas. And I hope we see some progress on that. But all of this should remind us that elections have consequences. Elections have consequences. And so when we think about November and what's at stake with the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House and obviously the presidency, these are the type of things that we have to think about. Let me get to our guest of honor, because he's a fabulous, fabulous advocate for what we want to hear tonight. Ironically, just this week on Wednesday, the Republican Study Committee, which I'm a part of, a conservative group in D.C., we had our annual luncheon, and Tom was the speaker at the luncheon this week. So I got to see him speak on Wednesday. He did a fabulous job in talking to us. But there's nobody better to speak on this topic. He's spent a career in law enforcement in New York City. He also spent time as a Border Patrol agent. He was an assistant director at ICE. He actually received an award from President Obama because of his work. And I didn't know that, Tom. I had to read this. But when he was an assistant director at ICE, Obama gave him the Presidential Rank Award for the impressive job in protecting the border and carrying out necessary deportations. And so think about that. And then, of course, under the Trump administration, he was elevated to the head of ICE and did a remarkable job there. And so he is a true public servant that cares deeply about this country and the rule of law, and highlights for all of us why this election and re-electing or bringing President Trump is so important to this country in the future. Let's give a warm McLean welcome to Tom Homan.
And I think the first thing I said in that luncheon was, you vote for this bill, you're an idiot. But a lot of people did, which is sad. I'm a Trump guy. If you're not, and if you're not a Trump person, you want to leave right now, because you don't like what I got to say. Look, I want to start with a real quick story. You know, I grew up milking cows. I mean, I grew up in a small community upstate New York on the Canadian border, and if you weren't a farmer, you're a logger. So if I wanted money, I had to go to a local farm and milk cows in the morning and at night, and I never thought I'd go from that to sitting in the Oval Office with President Trump. But, you know, my wife said one day, you've had a hell of a ride. I said, I want to have another hell of a ride in about 8 months. So, Well, let me tell you, this story about how I met President Trump. This is a true story. So right before the election, Hillary Clinton versus Trump, I was convinced Hillary Clinton was going to win. I think most of the country was. And so I announced my retirement. I was number 3 in command at ICE. So I announced my retirement before the election. I said, after 8 years, Obama, I can't work for Clinton. I just had it. So I signed a contract with this company as a consultant, making like 3 times as much money as I did as ICE director. My wife was happy. So I announced my retirement. I gave him 120 days notice because that job's really hard to fill because half the country hates you if you deport people. So the night of the election, I remember I went to bed, and I woke up next morning. I went to bed early, and I woke up next morning. My wife looked at me, she goes, Trump won. Now what are you going to do? I said, well, I already signed a contract with this company, and they're already looking for a replacement. I just got to go where I got to go. So fast forward to January, we were having our retirement party. I had a lot of people, there were 400 or 500 people there. It was the saddest day of my life because, as the sheriff's going to find out someday, the day you hang up that badge and gun, it's who you become. After carrying a badge and gun for 34 years, when you finally have to hang it up, it was the most depressing day of my life, that tomorrow I'm not going to be a law enforcement officer anymore. So it was a real sad event for me. And at the end of the event, me and my wife were outside shaking hands with everybody, and my chief of staff, who's no longer my chief of staff, Jackie Becker, walks up to me and said, you have an emergency phone call in your office. An empty office, because my shit was already packed up sitting in my garage at the house. I was going to start, this is Friday, I'm starting a new gig on Monday, start making some money. And I said, who is it? She goes, it's DHS Secretary John Kelly. So my wife looks at me and she goes, I said, he couldn't make it, so he's probably going to say congratulations. So I went up to my empty office, and I picked the phone up, and John Kelly goes, Tom, I know this is bad timing, but the President of the United States wants you to stay and run that agency. And I remember telling him, so it was bad timing, I just retired. He goes, no, you didn't, paper's on my desk, I haven't signed it. And I said, wow. I said, well, it's Friday. I mean, I need to talk to my family. I need to see if I can get out of this contract. I need the weekend. He goes, okay, Monday morning, 0600, I'll call you. I need an answer. And he goes, but before you hang up, and I remember this word for word, before you hang up, Tom, and let me leave you with this thought. He goes, the President of the United States is asking you, a career law enforcement officer, to serve your country a little bit longer. He needs your help, Tom. I'll talk to you on Monday. So with that, I'm driving home. My wife, she goes, what's the phone call about? And I told her. She goes, hell no. You ain't doing it. After, because, my family went through hell. Death threats against my wife and kids, constant security. They went through hell. And I moved so many times. And I said, but it's the President of the United States, babe. She goes, I don't care. I don't like him. And she didn't. She's his biggest fan now because she saw what he did for this country. She's his biggest fan. So after a weekend of fighting, Sunday night, we're laying in bed. She goes, what are you going to do? I said, what do you think I'm going to do? She goes, you're going to do it. I said, yes. She goes, I knew you would. She goes, I love you for it because you're not going to change as a man I married, and I just love you for your commitment. So the next morning, he called me up and said, let's do it. I remember John Kelly telling me, okay, turn your cell phone off, Tom, because the White House is going to announce it in about an hour. I said, all right. I didn't really understand that, but I shut my cell phone off, turned on the next morning, it's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails and texts. So the next morning, I show up at the ICE office. I walk into the building, had the surprise of hundreds of employees who are looking at me. Just gave me a gift 3 days ago because I was leaving. I walked up to my office, and I was met by 3 attorneys, all ethics attorneys from ICE. I said, what can I do for you, gentlemen? They says, well, we have a list of every gift you got Friday. Everyone needs to be returned. Because I didn't know my chief of staff was even keeping a list. She was keeping a list so I could write thank you letters. Well, she gave it to the ethics attorney, so they had it in her hand. We need all these gifts returned. And I said, okay, well, that won't be hard. They says, and also, your wife was given a $500 gift certificate. We're going to need that back, too. And I says, guys, I'll write you a check. I says, the last thing I want to do with my wife right now is go get that money because she's pissed off. She don't want me to be here. So I wrote him a check. And the next morning, I'm on Air Force One, the greatest president of my lifetime, Donald Trump. And he is. So we want to talk about the border. Look, the bottom line is the Trump. I worked for 6 presidents. When I left the police officer in New York and became Border Patrol agent. Ronald Reagan was president. So I've worked for 6 presidents. Every president I've worked for, including Clinton and Obama, took steps to secure the border. They did, because they understood you can't possibly have national security if you don't have border security. You got to know what's coming in, who's coming in, and what's coming in. Every president I worked for took some steps. No one did more than Trump. Trump was unprecedented, right? He was one badass president, and he took steps that no one else did. As the Congressman said, Remain in Mexico was a game changer. Joe Biden is the first president in history of this nation who came into office and unsecured the border on purpose. And that pisses me off every day. I wake up every day pissed off because we had the most secure border in my lifetime, and he destroyed it. We went from the most secure border, and this is my opinion, this is based on data. Anybody can go to cbp.com, look at the data. Most secure border in my lifetime, and within months, historic, never seen before numbers. First year, 1.7 million, a record, never saw those numbers before. Next year, he broke his own record at 2.3. Last year, total encounters, 3.2. Think about that, historic record. He's breaking his own record every year on purpose. This isn't mismanagement. This isn't incompetence. This is by design. There's no doubt in my mind. And why? What president wants more illegal immigration? What president wants more fentanyl to kill our young Americans? What president wants more sex trafficking of women and children? More illegal aliens die crossing under President Biden than any time in history. Since he's been president, over 1,700 aliens have died crossing the border. 1,700. 114,000 dead Americans from fentanyl poisoning. He's breaking all kinds of records, and none of them are good. And I'm sick and tired of the people that are saying the Trump policies were inhumane. Homan, you're a racist. Trump's a racist. Let me tell you something. Doctors Without Borders did a study. 31% of women that make the journey through the cartels get sexually assaulted. They get raped. Not just once, many times. 31% admitted it. So how many women actually get sexually assaulted? So when President Trump was president, we had illegal immigration down 83 to 90%, depending on what time frame you looked at the last 2 years. I say the last 2 years because the first 2 years, even though I had the House and Senate, you got the never-Trumpers who wouldn't help them. And I blame a lot of Republicans for that. Anyways, last 2 years, 83, 90%, depending on what time frame you look at. So let me ask you this. When 90% less people are coming, how many women weren't being raped? How many babies didn't die in the river? How many women and children weren't sex trafficked into the United States? How many known suspected terrorists didn't cross the border? How many pounds of fentanyl didn't come in the country to kill Americans? President Trump's policies save lives. Save lives. This administration is killing Americans at record numbers. They're killing illegal aliens at record numbers. I use the term illegal alien. If people take offense to that, that's what the law says. Title 8 United States Code, illegal alien. Title 18 United States Code, illegal alien. They changed the law, I changed the term. Last time I testified, some Democrats told me that was a bad term. You guys shouldn't be using it. Here's a lawmaker, a legislator, who writes laws that wants me not to speak to the law. You know, bullshit. You know, and like you guys, you know, I've argued with Congress many times. The last time I testified in front of Congress, my wife asked me, she goes, "Why do you keep doing this? They're going to call you racist. They're going to attack the men and women at Border Patrol. They're going to attack men and women. You've been retarded. Why do you keep doing this? They're going to hate on you." And they do. And she goes, and I said, because I promised the men and women of the Border Patrol and ICE that even though I retired for the second time, I would never leave their six. I'd always have their back and tell the truth. And so I remember leaving the house that day. She goes, "Well, baby, I'm going to say a prayer for you." I turned around, I looked at her, she better say a prayer for the first Democrat pissing me off. I'm not in the mood today. And I wasn't. What's happening on the southern border is not only a humanitarian crisis because of the number of deaths we're seeing. And some of the speakers earlier, you're right. These people are abused by the criminal cartels. These criminal cartels are animals. Animals. I remember one time I was with President Trump. We just arrested 500 criminal aliens in Long Island called Operation Matador. And it was great. It was a great operation. Most of them MS-13 gang members. And we were flying up on Air Force One and to do an event with Nassau County and talk about this big operation that went on. And I remember during the press conference, I'm sitting next to the president, and they asked him about MS-13. He says, they're animals. That's when Nancy Pelosi had a fit. He's calling people animals. He said, they're animals. They came to me, and I remember saying, well, I don't know what the president's got against animals, because animals killed to survive, MS-13 killed for pleasure. They're worse than animals. And I remember on the way back home, the president called me at the Oval Office. He goes, I should have had that line. He says, I should have had that line. He says, you say cool shit all the time. He looked at Steve Miller, said, Miller, what the hell's going on? Homan's got all these cool lines. 2 weeks ago, Homan said, my gang's bigger than their gang, because I had all these agents. So Steve got a lesson that night. Look, seriously though, what's happening on the southern border is not only the biggest humanitarian crisis this country's ever seen, it's the biggest national security failure since 9/11. And let me explain why. Border Patrol's arrested people from 181 different countries. Some of these countries are sponsored with terror. They've arrested 342 on the southern border since Joe Biden on the terrorist watch list. They've arrested twice as many of that in the northern border. No one talks about that. Ask yourself a question. Terrorists are trained not to be arrested. They're trained how to invade law enforcement. If they've arrested 342, how many didn't they arrest? Because the number you need to stick in your brain, 1.9 million known gotaways. We're almost at 2. We'll be at 2 million next week. 2 million people crossed the border and weren't arrested. Known gotaways. I'm talking about known gotaways. Their images are captured on drone traffic, sensor traffic, and camera traffic. Their images are seen, but the Border Patrol couldn't respond because they're too busy changing diapers, making baby formula, making sandwiches, making hospital runs, taking aliens to the airport for the free taxpayer-funded airline ticket. They're overwhelmed. On any given day, 70% of Border Patrol agents are no longer on patrol. Matter of fact, several times this past year, Yuma, El Paso, Rio Grande Valley, one more, I can't remember, 4 different sectors, Del Rio, 4 different sectors, every single uniform was taken off the line for days to deal with the overcrowding. Because all this administration cares about is the optics of the crisis. If there's no overcrowding, there's nothing to see here. And Secretary Mayorkas, who should have been impeached 2 years ago, can keep lying to the American people that border secure. So think about that. Hundreds of miles of border for days, not a single law enforcement officer. You don't think the cartels had a field day with that? Last time I testified, Democrats kept telling me that I'm lying when I say the fentanyl's coming across an open border. Most of it comes through the port of entry. That's bullshit. Most of the fentanyl seized at a port of entry because every vehicle stopped, every driver spoken to. And depending on their answers, it may secondary them. Plus, there's a CBP targeting system. I can't tell you what's in it. It's law enforcement sensitive. When they put that license plate number, it bounces off against all these cool databases. And they may come back and say, this is a vehicle you might want to secondary and take a look at. So, of course, they're seizing most fentanyl at port of entry. But what idiot thinks that the cartels are not going to use the route of least resistance where there's not a single agent within hundreds of miles? It's not a coincidence. In the last 3 years, the Border Patrol has been overwhelmed where 70 to 100% of agents are off the line days at a time. They have record overdose deaths. The sex trafficking is up 600%. But the terrorism aspect, 340, it's either 342 or 344, but it doesn't matter because twice as many at the northern border. And remember, after 9/11, GAO did a study, and it says the chances of a terrorist crossing the northern border are 10 times more likely than the southern border. No one's talking about that. 181 different countries, many of these countries sponsor terror, the rest of 342, 344. Got 1.9 million gotaways. How many of them came from a country sponsoring terror? Think about it. You think it's zero? If you think it's zero, you're a moron. That scares the hell out of me. I've been doing this since 1984. I've never been more concerned about the safety and security of this country than I am right now. And why would they cross the southern border? Why did 1.9 million people pay more to get away? Because you pay the cartels 2 months of money. Pay them this amount just to cross the river, across the desert, turn yourselves in. That's simple. The cartel's job ends at the border. But if you want to get to New York or Chicago or in an inner city, The cartel's job goes all the way to the inner city. They got to not only get you across the line and hide you and keep you away from Border Patrol, they got to transport you across the country. It's a lot more money. So why did 1.9 million people say, I want to pay more to get away? I don't want to turn myself in and get released the same day. I don't want a free airline ticket to the city of my choice. I don't want a free hotel room at $500 a night. I don't want 3 squares a day. I don't want free medical care. I don't want work authorization. Who the hell does that? Pay more to not take advantage of the giveaway program. Think about that. After 9/11, I was part of the committee that created all these different databases to make sure another 9/11 didn't happen. They came here on visas, they overstayed visas, they came here on airplane. So we created all these different databases, TSA no-fly list, FBI screening database, DOD field database, the visa security program, which I used to run. Visa security program, over the last decade, we've stopped thousands of people from getting a visa to come here when we found derogatory information in their background. What terrorist today is going to buy a plane ticket or ask for a visa, knowing they're going to be vetted, possibly outed, when they simply get to Mexico, pay the cartels a little bit extra money, and get away? I don't know how many terrorists have crossed the border since Joe Biden's been president, but someday we're going to find out. It's going to be a bad day for America. This is the biggest national security failure in my lifetime. Something is coming. No one's going to convince me otherwise. Even the guy who's running the FBI, who I don't really respect, even he says he sees more red flags right now than he did before 9/11. All the signs are there. And what's this administration do? Not a damn thing. They haven't did one thing to secure the border. They haven't did one thing to slow the flow. The only thing they do is send more resources to the border to process quicker and release quicker, because all they care about is the optics. When you process quicker and release quicker, more come. Then they get to where they're going. They call their relatives and their people in their village, say, hey, man, $3,000, here I am in New York City. And the government flew me here. I'm in a hotel room at $500 a night. I got 3 meals a day. Chicago's one. I'm glad Chicago's got a problem. They're sanctuary city. They don't want these people, and your sanctuary city policies. Because if you don't, I tell you right now, January 2025, you'll lose it. Sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. Governor Adams in New York City, where I used to work, he wants to scream and yell about it. He used to be a cop. He ought to take that badge off the wall and put it and hide it someplace, because he stopped being a cop, became a politician when he supports sanctuary cities. His officers want to work with ICE. Look at Laken Riley. She should be alive today. This administration failed her 3 times. Let me tell you why. Because under a Trump administration, he wouldn't have been here. He would have been sitting in Mexico in the Remain in Mexico program. If that program wasn't there, he'd be sitting in an ICE facility, because we ended catch and release. New York City, when he was arrested, ICE would arrest him, took custody of him. Now ICE can't arrest him because he doesn't have a serious enough crime to be arrested. Secretary Mayorkas has told the men and women of ICE, you can't arrest somebody for simply being here illegally. They got to be convicted of an aggravated felony. So even if ICE was notified, they say, well, NYPD released him. Didn't matter. The truth is, even if they notified ICE, ICE wouldn't have picked him up. Because they can't. Not under this administration. They failed this family 3 times. Now they had to bury their child. You know, I'm still being sued over the whole zero tolerance family separation thing. I'm sick and tired of hearing about that too, especially from idiots like AOC, who's the dumbest congresswoman in the history of the United States Congress. They don't make them dumber. I spent 15 minutes during the hearing explaining to her that it's actually against the law to enter the country illegally. Man, she's stupid. Where's I going with this? She should be alive today. So they want to talk about zero tolerance for separating families. Look, I was a cop in New York. I separated a lot of U.S. citizen families. Law enforcement, the sheriff, I'm sure you do it too. When a parent's arrested with a child, the child's not going to go to jail with that parent. And I tried to explain to AOC during the hearing. I said, well, a cop in New York arrested somebody for domestic violence. I separated that family. It's sad. No cop wants to do that, but it's necessary. So why do we separate U.S. citizen families thousands of times a day across this country by law enforcement, but illegal aliens can't be separated? Because what we did during zero tolerance, we were prosecuting them entering the country because it's a crime. We figured if you prosecute them, threaten to prosecute them, maybe they stop coming. Maybe less women get raped. Maybe less children die. It's about saving lives. But they want to say, Homan, you separate, you're the godfather of family separation. But they never had a hearing on the hundreds and hundreds of angel moms and dads that I sat down with who were separated from their kids because they buried them. No one's talking about that. Lake and Riley's, she was separated. She was buried. Illegal immigration is not a victimless crime. People say, well, it's just coming here for a better life, getting a job, sending money home. What's wrong with that? Because you don't understand the whole under ugly belly of this, of the rapes and the abuse. I get pissed off every day because President Trump had us at an all-time low. We saved lives. And I knew when Joe Biden was going to open that border up, more women are going to be raped, more kids are going to die, more Americans are going to die from drug overdoses, more terrorists are going to get in. That's why I'm pissed. Why are you so pissed off on Fox News? Why are you so pissed off and talk in front of Congress? Because I am pissed. We worked hard to give the most secure border in my lifetime, and they unsecured it on purpose. While I'm talking to you right now, I want you to think about this. Right now when I'm talking to you, women are being raped by the criminal cartels trying to cross that border. Not once, not twice, numerous times. A baby will die tonight crossing the border. Tonight. And this administration is not doing a damn thing about it. I get pissed off because I remember when I stood at the back of a tractor trailer and 19 dead aliens with a 5-year-old little boy that suffocated to death in his father's arms. I remember I got to the crime scene. I was in Dallas speaking to the IACP, and I get a phone call. There's a tragedy in Victoria, Texas. Get an Air Marine flight, get down there and run the investigation. Because at the time, Director Garcia knew I spent most of my career investigating cartels that smuggle people, smuggle guns, smuggle dope. So I went down there, and this kid, I grew up in a town with 2,500 people. I mean, I grew up milking cows. That's how I earned. My dad didn't give me a penny. You want the money? I better go earn it. What happened to those days? Anyways, I get off on a tangent. Me and my brother, we used to milk cows twice a day. Me and my brother go on Fort Drum. On Saturdays, we shine boots in front of the PX of the soldiers for 50 cents a pair. We had a hell of a business. We did all right. But here I am standing back to this tractor trailer. Texas Rangers walked me through the crime scene. And as soon as I walked back to the tractor trailer, there were several dead bodies on the ground because when the doors finally opened, the rush of people to get out pushed them dead bodies. The reason there was dead bodies there because they're all trying to fight over the one hole to get air. I remember looking back to the tractor trailer, I see all these dead bodies, all in their underwear except one person, because they took everything off to try to get some relief from the heat. Coroner says probably got to be 177, 180 back to that steel truck. Steel box, black. Couldn't see your hand in front of your face. People were dying standing up because there's no room to fall. Well, I remember looking back to the tractor trailer, I see this little boy. And he was 5 years old, we later found out. I still remember laying there wearing Batman underwear. And I remember when the crime scene photographer got there, we usually do things in quadrants. And I says, we going to go walk around the outside and work our way out front. He goes, why? I said, because I leave the baby alone. That was the wrong thing to do from a criminal investigative perspective. We should do things in quadrants. But I could not deal with a child at the time because I had a 5-year-old son at the time. And that affected me. That incident changed who I am today. Because I knew what his last hour of life was like. Fighting for air. Baking to death. So I saved the baby for last. And I did. I testified in Congress about this once. When we did him last, I actually knelt down. I knelt down and put my hand down and said a prayer for him because I knew what his last hour was like. No child deserves to die like that. But one's going to die tonight. President Trump had this stuff under control. Lives are being saved. A child's going to die tonight. This child should never die that way. In the investigation, he was begging his father not to let him die. The other witness that survives said he begged his daddy. Here's a 5-year-old boy that knew he was going to die and was begging his dad not to let him die because he wanted to see mommy again. And he died. And his father died on top of him and cradling him. I was out, so I've been to the Texas border 16 times in the past couple years. Went down the last time. The reason I'm telling you this, I'm not trying to make you all sad before you leave, but I hope you shed a tear, you get pissed off, because that's where we need to be right now. So we'll go down there. Talking to, I was riding with Sheriff Benny Martinez, Democrat, pissed off like me, because he only has like 7 deputies, and every one of them, they're not deputies anymore. They spent all day looking for dead bodies. And they already found, like in that year, they already found 100 in their county. People that just died in the desert. Cartels left them. They got sick. He's not worth any money. I'm not going to call 911. Lay there and die. That's what these cartels do. So I was with him for 4 hours. In 4 hours, we found 2 dead bodies. Later on that day, they took me out to meet the doctor who owned the ranch there. The doctor shared their story with me. True story. There was there was a family from an African nation, mother, father, and a child. The child was 22 months old. 22 months. 22 months. Little girl. The smugglers were bringing them across the river in a raft. Border Patrol started approaching them. What the smugglers do? They threw the family in the water. Knew they couldn't swim. Knowing the Border Patrol would stop trying to arrest them and save this family. Wearing 60 pounds of gear. So they jumped in. Saved them. They thought they saved them. The little girl died later in the hospital. This doctor shared with me during her post-mortem that 22-month-old little girl was sodomized in every little opening of her body by a member of the criminal cartel that demanded that for passage. That's what we're dealing with. That's why Tom Homan is pissed off all the time. That's why I take this shit emotionally, because we could have prevented this. Laken Riley should be alive today. If President Trump was here, chances are she would be. There's no guarantee. I tell you what, a lot less people died under President Trump. That's what pisses me off every day, and I'm pissed off. This administration unsecured the border on purpose. Who the hell does that? So that's why, as I agree with the congressman, this election, if we don't get it back, we can't fix it, ever. Right now, it's going to take 10 years to fix this shit. I'm sure I swear, but I get off. My wife's telling me to stop swearing. And I tell her I can't help it, but I apologize. If I offend anybody, I don't care. Because I'm pissed. Look, President Trump, I meant what I said. He's the greatest president of my lifetime. I spent a lot of time with him in Oval Office. I've been Air Force One with him. I travel with him now. I've worked for 6 presidents. I tell you, this man loves this country like no other man I've ever met, next to my father. And he doesn't need this shit. He didn't need to come back, take this hate. He can go be a billionaire. He doesn't need this. But he wants to come back. He loves this country. He wants to take this country back. Someone made a comment earlier. I forgot who it was, but this is not the America I grew up in. As I said, I grew up in a small town, a farming community. Every house had an American flag on the front porch. Everybody respected police. That's why I became a cop. My father was a cop. My grandfather was a cop. Cops were respected. And I said, no, I want to serve my community. I want to be one of those guys, one of those heroes. Now cops aren't respected by a lot of people. I'm sure in this community they are, because you're a small, tight-knit community, but you think they're respected in Chicago and New York? Hell no, the mayor took their insurance away. So they take somebody down, and he decides to sue that cop. The cop's on his own. He could lose his house, his car, everything, because the city's not going to protect him. Law enforcement, in my opinion, are the finest 1% this country has. And even though I haven't wore a badge and gun in 3 years, I wear the thin blue line American flag on my collar every day, because I love cops. And I love the men and women of the Border Patrol. I started my career as a Border Patrol agent. I wore that uniform. And these men and women go to work every day, strap a gun to the hip, put the Kevlar vest on, and To work for administration they don't respect. To work for administration, don't let them do their job. Don't let them uphold the oath they took. Don't let them enforce the law. They're processing, driving people to the train station or the bus station, and sending them on their way. That's just not going to happen in a Trump administration. I guarantee it. Trump administration will end catch and release. That stuff you seen in El Paso last night, where hundreds rushed to the National Guard, that happened one time in the Trump administration in San Diego. They didn't get anywhere near the line. Border Patrol shut that shit down. They sent smoke grenades and sting bombs. I mean, they remember they showed the image of the mother carrying the child and they dropped the shoes. Border Patrol were bad. They're racist. No, Border Patrol did their job to secure the border, and they want to do it again. So last time I was down there, we were flying a helicopter to Texas DPS. I'm short of my time. I want to tell you this one story though. So we're up there and we're flying, and these 3 Border Patrol agents are trying to track this group. So we're flying around. We're trying to look for them, and I just had this sense of saying, man, drop me down there. And the DPS, he goes, why? I said, I want to help these guys track. I said, I did this. I mean, I used to be a Border Patrol agent. I forgot how to do this. Send me down there, help them. They landed me, and I helped track these guys. And after we got done, I talked to these 3 agents, and it really brought home how they felt, because one guy says he feels like an Uber driver. The other one said he felt like a tourist guide. And one guy told me, and true story, he goes, I put my uniform on this morning. I always look in the mirror, make sure my gig line's straight, and I'm looking good. And he goes, today, for the first time in my life, I look in the mirror and says, I'm the part of the biggest human smuggling organization in the world, the United States Border Patrol. Because we're delivering these people, or allowing these people to travel to the very same person that hired a criminal organization to smuggle them. That's what we have today. And it needs to end. And I'll say this finally. Secretary Mayorkas was impeached 2 years ago when he slandered the men of the Horse Patrol. I remember sitting on my TV watching that, and I was in the Border Patrol. I know the rules of engagement. I watched it and said, they didn't do anything wrong. The only people that did anything wrong that day were the Haitian aliens that came across the border illegally. That's a crime. They ignored verbal commands from a federal agent, which is a felony. No one talked about them. It was about these Horse Patrol guys who did a fabulous job. They did exactly as they're trained to do. The horses even performed exactly as they're trained to do, like NYPD. They're crowd control horses. They did exactly what they're supposed to do. So I'm watching this and I'm saying, man, these guys are good. The next day, no, they're racist. They whip black people. Here's what irritates me. Secretary Mayorkas was briefed 2 days before he went to the White House podium. He was briefed that no whipping occurred. But he stood at the White House podium 2 days later and did everything but call him out as racist. President Biden did. These men, their wives and children were bullied in churches, bullied in schools. Going home as a GS-12 Border Patrol agent being called out by the Secretary of Homeland Security and the President of the United States as a racist. They took hell. They're still not back to full duty. Even though the investigation was clear, now they're trying to find something. Well, he used a bad word. That's a violation. Well, they were too aggressive. That's a violation. They're going to find something to hang on these guys because they're going to save the embarrassment of the White House and the Secretary. I've said from day one, last time the President's Secretary down there for the photo op a few weeks ago, he should have spent the time to go meet those Border Patrol agents and apologize to them on national TV, the same place they slandered them. That's never going to happen. So when you see a Border Patrol agent, shake their hand and thank them because they're not getting that kind of love. The left think they're a bunch of racists. I tell you, they're the finest men and women I've ever met. I wore that uniform. I'm proud to wear that uniform. And if they need us. Their morale's in the toilet. You know who has the highest percentage of suicides in any law enforcement agency, federal, state, or local? United States Border Patrol. They lost 22 last year. Well, actually in the last 14 months, 22. I'm not saying this body control border made them take their lives, but whatever internal struggles they were having, watching dead babies, talking to girls that got raped multiple times, saving lives, seeing dead bodies floating down the river, that's got to weigh on them. I've talked to little girls as young as 9 that's been raped when I was an agent. And when you look in a little girl's eyes that's 9 years old and see everything innocent and with her has been gone, stolen, she's never going to be the same. She'll never look at this world the way she should look at this world as a little girl with dreams. And it was just ripped away from her by some pig. That shit happens every day on the board. I want to leave with this. I want to leave with that image. It's happening every day. It's happening right now because this president fails to do anything to stop it. That is why I made a promise to President Trump. He comes back, I come back, we fix this shit. And I'll make another promise. Tom Homan. I will run the biggest deportation operation this country's ever seen. You can take that to the bank.
We want to just very quickly, a couple of things I'd like to share. First of all, I grew up in South Texas in the Rio Grande Valley. So it is heartbreaking to see what's happening down there. My family and friends and such, the stories are horrific, just as Tom has shared. I know people personally going through that. My husband and I, our oldest daughter, is a federal law enforcement officer as a Customs and Border Protection. So, and she's doing a darn good job. She's working hard, as many of her fellow officers are. But obviously what's happening is of grave concern personally, which is why I keep coming back and working here. Because we think maybe we're so far removed from what's happening out there, but we're not. The very actions that we can take as a county party can make a difference in what's happening in Washington, what's happening in all across the country. But it takes all of us to get out of our seat, to go either join the party, to volunteer. You know, we need 100 precinct committeemen in our county alone. They added extra precincts in our county with the redistricting, and we are missing so many spots. So if you ask yourself, well, what can I do to help make a difference? Well, become a precinct committeeman and help get good people elected. And we will train you, we will show you how to do the job, and we will encourage you and hopefully send you out the doors ready to make a difference in what happens in this upcoming election. I'm going to be out at the table out here to if you're interested in talking about joining the party or becoming a precinct committeeman, stop by. We'll have a good chat, and I will give you the right papers to fill out to do just that. We thank you so much for coming tonight. I know that Tom's hanging around a little bit, but he's heading to Chicago to catch a plane just because you're meeting with Trump in the morning, are you not? Well, we'll let you go tonight, I guess. We'll have to let you go. But we're grateful very much, Tom, for you being here, taking your time. We need to thank Sally Turner and Dan Calkins for coming and sharing. I want to thank Congressman LaHood. He's one of the reasons he's one of our hosts, our host for this program. So I would be remiss in not thanking our others that were hosting for this. Craig, I'm sorry, I'm trying to read my own writing. Craig Shepard and Jerry Klinkner and Mary Carlisle, along with Congressman LaHood, made this event possible. So thank you very much. Thank you for your support always. I think I have a snow brush out in my car. So if somebody needs to borrow one going out tonight, I'm hoping it's maybe gone away by between now and when we came in. I know it was snowing earlier, but please be careful driving home. Sign up and learn what you can do for McLean County. Have a safe trip. Thank you. Bye-bye.